Dith, what up, man?
Hey, how's it going?
Doing well. So you're the founder of Gigaverse, which is an on-chain RPG game with 75,000 players, have done over 5 million in annualized revenue, and just closed a $2 million round from one confirmation. So seeing some good traction. Um, so you've been working in Web3 gaming for a few years at, I think, Proof of Play and Pirate Nation. So I'm curious what led you to wanting to build your own game studio and what opportunity you saw that maybe those companies were missing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, well, firstly, I grew up as a gamer, so it was like a childhood dream of mine to be working in gaming or building games. And then I caught the sort of startup bug pretty early. I launched my first startup when I was still in university. I was 20, 21 years old. Of course, didn't know what the hell I was doing, but it was super fun. And I've basically been in and around startups ever since. Of course, I've had, in sort of air quotes, like proper jobs here and there. But for the most part, I've been working on my own startups. Improve of Play is an awesome company. I had a great 2 years there. I was running go-to-market, learned a lot there. Very entrepreneurial company as well. The founder I met, he had hired about 50% of the team were former founders. So for me and my co-founder, it's kind of always a matter of time for us to work on our own thing. When we launched Gigaverse, it was done in a very sort of like hobbyist manner. Like we just want to build a game we love. We set no expectations around it. It was honestly just like a couple of us in a Discord channel building this thing. But when we launched it and saw the traction, we realized pretty quickly we had to put our full balls in, and we quit our jobs like 3 to 4 weeks later, and the rest is history, as the saying goes.
Well, let's dive into that. Rest is history. But maybe first, you want to give us an overview of how the game works today?
Yeah. So super simple. It's browser based. Browser is not the best choice for like game distribution. If you look at all playtime across the board with 3 billion plus gamers, browser is like less than 1% of playtime, right? Mobile gets the lion's share. But we are building a game for like an on-chain native audience. And so browser is the user experience that they are familiar with, right? Like in browser, they're playing with Hyperliquid, Pump Fun, or any number of sort of like on-chain apps, and so that's why it made sense to start there with Gigaverse. It's also just very, very quick and easy. As time goes on, later we may be on other platforms. And as for the game itself, very nostalgic, kind of pixel RPG throwback to, we just want to take you back to your childhood. If you were playing games growing up in like the 80s and 90s, I think nostalgia is like super powerful. The other design principle is like you got to be able to figure out what you need to do just by looking on the screen. Like we try to like optimize for legibility. I think, especially going into like a busy market, a frothy market, recognizing that our persona they're using many different apps and there's like a lot of noise, a lot of distractions. You can't force people to think too much. So they got to be able to figure out like what to do at a glance. And then like finally, so what is the game itself and what are we growing towards? You should think of kind of like a Disneyland type experience where there's lots of different rides, i.e. lots of different mini games. They're all interconnected through kind of all these loops are connected through a trading loop, an item collection loop. Like you need to get this one thing from one game mode to be used in another and so on. And the idea there over time is there'll be so many game modes that a player can't be the best in all. They can't min-max all of them. They need to pick and choose, and that kind of stimulates social coordination, kind of a guild mode. And if we do this right, we're ultimately building a social MMO that tens, if not hundreds of thousands of players can be playing any given day or week and trade with one another. And there's always like cool and interesting things happening in the world.
I'm curious how you approach game design differently, targeting a crypto native gaming audience versus maybe mobile or traditional gaming audience.
Yeah, it's recognizing that I think, part of, and I see crypto in its entirety as kind of an MMO. And so I think, one of the main principles game design principles we talk a lot about is just like the feeling of risk and reward. But it doesn't have to be like, full porting 100 grand in some, leverage trade. It could be at a very, very small scale. And so we introduce like tons of these little moments where there's risk and reward. For example, like when you craft items, like we have these potions that you can take into one of the game modes, this dungeon game mode. And the potions are currently on the market for like $1 or $2. So it's not super expensive. But when you craft one, there's only a 70% chance that the craft will be successful, and there's a 30% chance that it will fail. And so, really throughout the gaming experience, we try to like introduce a lot of like risk and reward elements, a lot of player choice, a lot of like meta games within the game as well. So we have this other saying about like, there are games within the game, which just introduces like different ways for different people to win. If we have a player who's super tight on budget and they can't be spending hundreds of dollars, then they can still find ways to win in the game. And at the other end of the spectrum, if we have like a whale who wants to be putting down hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, like there's a different game that they can be playing. And a good example of that is like we have this auction going live in an hour for a very sort of OP one-of-one character. The last set of auctions, they each fetched like over 10 ETH each. So we're trying to build a world ultimately where both ends of the spectrum can coexist, and I think that's if we do that right, then yeah, it should be an awesome experience. And like just like a real world economy, there's going to be like different types of citizens, different types of spending, different types of risk.
I'm curious, when you think about mobile gaming, in many ways, it's sort of a very small percentage of the users are driving most of the revenue there, targeting whales. Is that the same here, or do you think that there is sort of does crypto unlock broader earning opportunities for a game like yours?
For us, our ARPDAU is very high. Last I checked, it was something like over like $30-$35 per player. At the top end, some of our players have spent thousands of dollars. I actually think there's appetite for them to be spending much more, but we actually haven't created the game loops or the opportunities for them to spend more. I think we can get there in time. And so yeah, I mean, if we were launching to sort of air quotes Web 2 casual gamers or normie gamers on mobile, I don't think we'd have anywhere close to this level of monetization. The other reason why it's great to launch as a crypto game and to serve these users is we just have this sort of like propensity to we like being early. Actually, when you see the thing is kind of rough around the edges, or there's bugs, or there's UI polish that's needed, it's kind of this it has the pull of being like, oh, okay, so yeah, now I know I'm early, and there's usually some there's usually upside in being early. So I think where it's hard for studios is where they try to do both at the same time, and you're simultaneously trying to build for like a crypto native audience and reach like mass market Web 2 casual gamers. They're very, very different persona types, very different sort of go-to-market motions, very different messaging, very different everything. And I don't think that really works. You got to place your bets and go one or the other.
So did you just see a huge business opportunity in serving crypto native gamers, or is this just like kind of the necessary starting point, and then you eventually jump into the mainstream, but getting this right?
To start, yes. I mean, people criticize the space as being, it's very small. It depends who you ask. They'll be like, there's like 50,000 people here. There's 100,000 or 150,000. But yeah, any of those numbers is, if you think about market sizing, they're all very small. But it is a very powerful market. And these, the community that you can build here, these people become like super strong evangelists, which can kind of like really play a really important role for you as you're breaking breaking out of the space. If you look at other consumer crypto brands like Pudgy Penguins, like I think the community that they started with in the early, the first year or two, they were really just kind of an NFT project, right? But now the level of evangelism and connectivity and network and signaling that they have through their holders, I think is a real edge for them as they kind of try to break into mainstream, and they're like selling in Walmart and 7-Eleven and doing NASCAR partnerships and all kinds of things. They're able to go to those brands and outlets and say, hey, look, we have a very loud, very influential holder base, and that's an asset and edge for us in a world where there's like lots of brands trying to do what we're doing. So at some point we will want to serve this sort of like the wider gaming audience, but it's going to come down the line and just be done in a very intentional way at a very intentional time.
So I'm curious how you approached choosing to fundraise now. I think you just did a $2 million round with One Confirmation leading. How did you decide that you wanted to work with them, and why now?
Well, as I say, the launch was all very organic. Kind of put Gigaverse out there into the wild, and then we ourselves were like very pleasantly surprised just to see the traction, and we realized quickly like, hey, we need to like focus on this, that there's real potential here. And then as part of just I guess losing the security of having just good, well-paid day jobs, it became like a natural question for us. Should we raise? And if so, from whom? So I did the rounds probably, I started speaking to some funds going into our sort of second or third month. Most of the funds that I spoke to, though, were follow funds. So I was typically hearing like, yeah, love what you guys are doing. Count us in. Let us know when you find a lead. So then we started speaking to a few leads, and conversations were going well. We were like in the DD process. But at this point, we'd already made, I think, about 3 million revenue. And so my co-founder and I were like really questioning, should we raise? We kind of don't really need to, at least not for the money. And at that point, literally from a cold Twitter DM, we heard from Brett at One Confirmation. And he was just like, hey, I'm playing games. Gigaverse looks cool. Shall we chat? And so we had a conversation. I think we spoke for like about an hour, but just really about the game and where we wanted to take it. And it was only at the end of that I was like, oh yeah, by the way, we're kind of fundraising. We're thinking about it. And he said, all right, well, why don't I'll introduce you to my team. Why don't you bring your co-founder as well? And again, very organic that we had a conversation there and got to know who they were and how they operate. And it became clear to us like, okay, there's this value here beyond the money. And, we do have these, I think pretty grand sort of goals and aspirations we want to hit. This is no longer a hobbyist project for us. We actually see there's an opportunity for us to build like the #1 crypto game. And, realistically to do that, it's good to have really strong partners in your corner. Having a slightly larger war chest, like, it's always a cool thing, but it's, it's about the expertise and network and the value add. And honestly, we saw that very, very quickly, even before we'd signed the term sheet. And so the final cool thing about it was like we opted to take as little as money as we could here. We ended up having quite a lot more committed capital, and I just had to do the rounds with everyone else and say, hey, look, like, we're fortunate to be in a great spot, and we're trying to like minimize how much capital we take on board here. We operate in a very lean manner. We're very frugal. We like to keep the team very small. I actually think if we were to expand the team or double the size of the team, it would just slow us down. So so it all worked out really, really well. I think we found the perfect partner for us at this stage.
Awesome, man. Well, I guess I got a new game I got to go play here, Josh. I can click buttons. It seems like it's approachable enough for me.
I'd love to know what you think if you give it a go.
We'll play it and give you some feedback for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Well, congrats on all the progress. I love hearing a nice organic story. Feels like the right starting point here. And clearly you guys are on your way to something big here. Wish you all the best as you pursue it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, appreciate you having us on.
Thanks, Dith. Cheers, man.
Peace, Dith.
Cheers.